Want me to do it again? There we go. Thursday, August 9th, another wonderful afternoon for Jonesboro Rotary. The young married couple, the young bride called her mother and said, Mother, this is the second time we've had a tiff and he's talked ugly to me again. I'm coming home and live with you. And the mother said, no, he deserves to be punished. I'm coming to live with you. Anyway, glad you're here. Looks like we've got mostly Jonesboro veterans here, so but that's good also. And all of us are under the effect of this hot, humid weather. I was in Brunswick County at Oak Island this past weekend. We were supposed to play golf for 3 days, and the first day it was raining pretty hard, and so we didn't get to. And someone said, well, they have a movie here. We could go to the movie, and we looked on the movie marquee, and it was Mamma Mia 2. And so I said, I don't know that I want the word to get out that 4 of us came to Brunswick County. 4 of us guys came to Brunswick County and watched Mamma Mia. But anyway, Peggy, I'm sure it was a wonderful movie, and you'll be doing more of it soon. At this time, I'm going to ask Kate Rumley if she would lead us in our invocation, please.
And could I ask everyone to join me, please? The Rotary prayer, service above self. Open our eyes that we may see. Open our ears that we may hear. Touch our hearts that we may love. Clear our minds that we may think. Strengthen our hands that we may work.
Thank you. Today, I don't believe we have any official guests or whatever, with the exception of our speaker, Mr. Marshall Downey, and John will be introducing him in just a minute. Maybe we do have a makeup, Mr. Rich Clements. There we go. Okay, we have one makeup. Thank you.
Rick's a new guy.
Right. 2 makeups. Wow, you did great. Thank you so much. And
Sergeant at Arms.
Sergeant at Arms. Okay, Van, am I taking over your thunder?
No, sir. I don't have anything in my mouth or anything.
Oh, okay. Go ahead.
Except he's
That's
good.
usually what I try to do now.
Okay. Kate, thanks for that invitation. That was great. Okay. Do you have any announcements to come before the club at this time? Well, I'm going up front, Terry. Yvonne, thank you.
Yeah, a couple. Next Thursday night, we're going to be going over to Mike Steck's. Where's Mike? There you are. Over to Camelback Brewing Company.
When?
Next Thursday night.
That was Tuesday.
Tuesday?
21st.
Yeah, it's that we're going to go on the
21st.
21st.
21st. My error. I'm sorry.
No problem.
And that's where our.
We'll go both nights.
Yeah.
Come on. That's a better idea.
So it's going to be a type of family of Rotary event, so we can all get together with our families if you want to. Mike, I understand, has food also, so you can come and eat and drink. And I'm sure he might have something besides beer. But if that's not all right, we can go to Lowe's and get some water or something. Okay? Anyhow, that, and then the next thing is I am putting together a fellowship for women. And so it's going to give us an opportunity to get together and get to know one another better. And maybe we can even find some of our friends to come and check Jonesboro Rotary out and maybe increase our membership that way. But anyhow, the main thing is just to get together and just socialize and just enjoy one another.
Tuesday, the 21st at
Camelback Brewing.
time.
Mike, 6 o'clock?
That's fine.
Okay.
6 o'clock.
Do we
Be
make
there
that
or
so?
be square.
Thank you, Yvonne. And just to mention, thank you for that idea of fellowship among you lady Rotarians. I think that's a grand idea also.
We'll go see Mamma Mia too.
You can bring a report back about it because I missed it.
thank you, weather.
I've seen it. There's only one man in front of her. I went to see
Okay, any other announcements come for the club? Larry, you got anything?
Just next week, we skip next week.
Skipping next week. No meeting next Thursday because we're gonna be meeting on Tuesday, the 21st.
And staying
At
until
Campbell.
Thursday.
Brewery. There we go. There we go. Okay. Anybody got anything they want to brag about? Ooh, Jennifer's got some money. Ooh.
Well, let's see what Jennifer's gonna brag about first.
I'm gonna give you $2.
Okay.
This is doubly good. As soon as I started at the Temple Theater, which was the opening week for Beauty and the Beast, so it was a pretty frenetic time to start any job, but especially that job. There was a person that came up to me, introduced herself, and has done everything she can to make me feel welcomed and supported in this role. She has gone above and beyond. She stops in the office probably once a week, and if she doesn't, she calls. She's helped me out with playbill sales this summer. And I just want to say thank you to Yvonne Bullard for welcoming me to Sanford, the Temple, and especially to Rotary. So thank you. That was worth it.
Thank you. It's a pretty good brag, too.
Man,
Yes, sir. Morris.
I told y'all I was gone this weekend golfing, and my wife went and visited our daughter in Waxhaw near Charlotte, and on Sunday brought back our 3 granddaughters, and it's Wednesday, and my bragging dollar is they're still alive.
How long you got us for?
Tomorrow.
I'm bragging on our education department this summer. They are wrapping up the 6th camp of the summer this weekend with Aladdin Junior. If you'd like to come, it's Friday night, Saturday night at 7:30, Saturday and Sunday at 2 p.m. And overall this summer, we've served about 280 kids at the Temple. Wow. And they've done a fabulous job. It's amazing to see. I just watched the DVD of Into the Woods last night that I didn't get to see because I was out of town. What those kids did with that very difficult show in 10 days was really impressive. So I'm bragging about that.
Rick.
How many of you know somebody from Melbourne, Australia? I knew she would. Anybody else? Well, I know one because I met him in an elevator in Vancouver, and he introduced himself because I was wearing my Rotary pin.
Yeah.
And it reminded me of one of the many reasons of what I missed about Rotary in the 30 years I've been out of it. So I'm bragging.
You know what they say? Wear it daily. Wear it with pride. Yes, sir. Thank you, Rick. Appreciate that. Anybody else got anything they're going to brag about?
Yeah.
Gary.
Yeah. And I want
Bring
my-
it on, brother.
And I want my change.
Gary, you can do it. You got the money, brother.
So Terry's bragging because his lowest dollars in 20 grand.
Jamie has the money. Jamie has the money.
You go ahead and brag. I'll get you some change.
I got 2 brags. John.
Me?
Yeah. You know those, you know the song, Big Bad John? But he's the good John. He's the big good John. I picked up the phone, called him probably about 2 or 3 times a week about different little things, and John had never refused to hang up the phone on me. Click. And
I don't have caller ID.
There's a secret.
Okay, that's the secret. And this person is gonna be really surprised here. Dr. Bud. Hey, Dr. Bud, there you go. I'm always out videoing here and there, and good old Dr. Bud, he always pulled me aside and Terry, hear this important person, hear that important person. And so when you're in multimedia like I am, it's important for all these important persons to be pointed out to you so you don't forget how important they are. So Dr. Bud, hey, cheers to you. And don't forget, I'm gonna do your video for you. The only thing you got to do is say, this message approved by me. You don't have to be in front of the camera.
Thank you, Terry. Rita.
Let him go, yeah.
Terry has caught Larry Aiken's disease. Last week, 3 baseball games, 2 Indians wins, a walk-off in Milwaukee, 2 new stadiums logged, and Tuesday night, Yes, Tuesday night. We and the Morrises went to Durham and saw the Clippers win a doubleheader. And 17 new beers on the beer rack.
All right. Thank you. Thank you. Rita, what you got? Come on up.
This may be considered a brag on myself, but it's not just me.
Okay.
I'm a member of the Board of Elections here in Lee County, and we just had our annual convention for training and certification in ethics. And I want you to know that, the highest priority on our election process to make sure it is accurate and protected and safe is of vital importance. The Department of Homeland Security has declared our elections process one of the 16 critical infrastructure systems that are vital to the proper functioning of our country. And to ensure that you get to hear about that, our director, Parker Holland, has volunteered. He will come as a guest speaker on Thursday, the 6th of September. And he will talk to y'all about that, things that are going on. And I know that you're going to appreciate learning about that, especially with all of the angst of politics, but the importance of being able to assure that your votes, and votes are done legally, and that is done correctly and properly and securely. So I want y'all to know that.
Kate, what you got?
I got, Brick Capital's moved back into its old office at 403 Maple Street. Brick Capital has a wonderful housing counselor, and I want to tell all you business folks who have people in your offices that I would bring by flyers or send them. We have 3 homebuyer education classes between now and the end of the year. And we have funding from Housing Finance Agency to help people with down payment assistance who are 80% and below median, which could be, firefighters, teachers, couple and children. You've got 80% below median. So give me a call.
Kate, thank you so much for all you do. Really appreciate it. Any other brags coming for the club at this time? I'm gonna brag real quick. I'm gonna brag. Last night we lost our power, so I called up my buddy and I'm like, "Hey, you got power up there?" He's like, "Yeah, we got power. We got beer. We got food. We got friends. Come up and join us at Camelback. Your car will still run when there's no power. Come up to Camelback." So I'm just kind of bragging on Mike there and his fine establishment that we will be gracing on the 21st at 6 o'clock. Any other brags? Oh, Jamie. Patrick.
This is on, he's never here, so we don't mean to forget him. But Kristen Lambert on passing all of his summer classes for law school this summer.
Woo!
Okay. That way he makes sure he gets the makeup too.
Thank you. Appreciate that, Patrick. Any other things coming for the club at this time? Back to you, President Morris. Thank you.
Man, thank you so much for the great job you do with setting us up and the bragging bucks and announcements, all that.
Get
Thank
going
you
here
very
on this
much.
raffle here real quick.
As has been mentioned, no meeting next week. The following week on the 23rd, the district governor will be here, Claudia Kennedy. I hope I'm saying that right. Dynamic lady with lots to talk about, lots to tell us. She has asked for a meeting of the board of directors prior to that. So if you're bored, and I'll ask John to send this out, I'll send him a reminder. But any of us that are on the board, if we could be here at 11 o'clock, she wants to address us separately and have some reports, so we'll talk about that. But just remember, no meeting next week, and we may send out a blast on that to remind you, and I assume someone will contact the Flames to let them know not to prepare on that.
Yeah, that's usually you.
I believe that's all I have right now, so I'm going to turn the meeting over to John, who will introduce our speaker. Thank you, John.
Thank you, President Morris. All right, today we have a big topic and a lot to talk about with Marshall Downey. Marshall is the director, the planning director rather, for City of Sanford and County of Lee. He has held that position since 2014. Prior to that, he was the assistant planning director from 2003 to 2014. He has a Bachelor of Science degree in urban and regional planning from ECU, go Pirates. He has his MPA, Master's of Public Administration from UNC Charlotte. He is married to Penny and has 3 boys. He's got twins that are entering their sophomore year of college and an older son who's currently enrolled in community college in Lexington. So please, a warm Rotary welcome for Mr. Marshall Downey.
Thank you, everybody. I recognize a lot of faces in the audience, so it's good to be here. Always a pleasure to come and have an opportunity to kind of speak at these functions and the value that you guys bring and the support that you give our department is fantastic, because I know a lot of the faces in here, I kind of work with you individually on different projects. But what I really wanted to talk about today, as John said, is this is a pretty complex project that we've been working on for 2 years. It is a very, very important, from a public policy standpoint, project for our community. So what I really want you to have is a couple of takeaways from this today as I kind of go through this. One is I want to press upon you how important this document is from a public policy standpoint and for our decision makers, and as well as you as local leaders and folks who have a stake in this and how our community grows. The second part of that is I do want to get in the weeds a little bit and talk a little bit about what a land use plan is and how kind of the components of this will work and the process that we went through. So with that, how many of you are aware that we actually have an existing land use plan? And you don't look at the slide, but yes, we do, right? So as it says there, it was a plan that was envisioned to go till about 2020. It was a 20-year plan at the time. It was actually done in the late 90s. So clearly, it's in dire need of an update, right? We're closing in on that 2020 pretty quickly, and really there hasn't been any changes to that. And to be quite candid with you, most of the staff and the elected officials, this plan is so dated and archaic, it's really of very little value to us. And that's why we really want to change and kind of do a different way of going about this. So, kind of jumped ahead here, but why do you need an update to your land use plan? What's the value of that? Why would we go through this comprehensive process to do that? As I said, it was adopted in 1999. The primary function of the land use plan and that guide is a blueprint for how you want your community to grow, okay? The third bullet there is very important. Developers, citizens, and staff have a better understanding of what parts of your community are envisioned to be urban, where you want to put your utilities, where you want to put your people in terms of higher density, and what parts of your community you don't want to grow. So when that developer comes to your community and they want to invest, you give them guidance. It gives us it makes our lives a lot easier from a staff level, because we can work with that developer to get their vision, to allow them to create what they want to create in our community and make that investment. But we're not butting heads with citizens and property owners who don't want to necessarily have that occur in their area. And the elected officials, of course, and you as citizens, whether you're in the business sector, whether you're just a resident, you can come in and kind of see where our community is supporting that growth and where we want to make those investments. So again, the bullets there, the following bullets, that really just kind of promotes that in terms of efficiency of infrastructure. Because if we work hand in hand with our, say, the Public Works Department with the city, and we have a plan where we want our growth to occur, then essentially that plan is modeled off of where they intend to extend those infrastructures from the most cost economic standpoint and where it makes the most sense. And we'll get into a little more of that and how we came about that. So again, the plan simply identifies areas of future growth. And when I say that, one thing you have to keep in mind, because a lot of people think undeveloped land kind of at the fringe of the city. One of the things the plan also promotes is infill and redevelopment on the inside of the existing city too, because we have a lot of opportunities there as well, as we've seen somewhat happening with the marketplace, with the reinvestment we've had, with the streetscape and things like that. So, how did we kind of go about this and where are we at in the process? So as I said, this has been a multi-year process. We actually kicked this off in 2016. And I'm going to kind of go through each of these steps in a little more depth, but this is a real quick overview of how of the process we went through, where we initially kicked it off. We hired a consultant to help give us guidance, to bring in some fresh ideas. How do we attack this? We get so mundane in our day-to-day lives in terms of what we're doing on current planning, it's hard to necessarily look to the future and envision, so we brought a consultant in to kind of give us some guidance as to how other communities are doing, how to kind of reinvent that wheel and attack it. Go ahead, John. So, first thing they did, like any typical planning process, is you take a look at all the data and all the information. They went in and they kind of took a look at our community to get a better understanding. We worked with them hand in hand. We downloaded all the GIS latest, and I'm sure many of you in the room have probably been on our GIS system, one of the best in the area. We really have a really quality system, and so we have access to a lot of information we were given to them. We also did stakeholder interviews, and we did drop-in sessions. Okay? So one of the things that helped us quite a bit when we were trying to update this comprehensive land use plan, focused specifically on how things are going to develop, is what this slide shows. Is if you look at it starting way back in 1999 when the last plan was done, there's been a lot of planning efforts and a lot of planning initiatives done in our community that were focused on other aspects of our community, not land use per se. So you can see you've got small area plans, you've got hazard mitigation plan, you've got bicycle plan, pedestrian plan, parks and recreation. So again, the point of that is when these folks came in, we were trying to update our land use plan. We didn't have to reinvent the wheel and look at what might be considered more like a true comprehensive plan where we're looking at all these multiple complex issues. We were able to take our experiences and analyses from these plans and simply plug those into our land use plan process. And I'm not throwing a lot of information at you today. This is a complex topic, so if there's something that's really confusing you, I am going to try to have questions and answers at the end, but if something I'm saying that just doesn't make sense, please let me know and I'll try to explain a little more. So from that data and from all that analysis, I'm just throwing up a couple of slides here as an example. This was some information that we put together for the public drop-in sessions. This was households, for example. This is some of the data and analysis. This is just a snapshot of what we use to kind of explain to people what's happening in our community compared to what's happening in the state or other or similar-sized communities around us. Go ahead. Again, this is housing, and there's lots of numbers buried in here that again, you're not going to be able to capture today. This was just trying to give you kind of a snapshot of some of the information we were looking at. And then, commuting patterns, travel patterns, and things like that. So, as I said, one of the other things that we did is we tried to identify the key stakeholders in our community that, beyond just the city staff, county staff, elected officials, that we felt like needed input into this early on and needed to get some feedback with our consultants and with our staff as we were looking to craft this. This is not a 100% exhaustive list, but I just tried to pull out some of the ones for this group that you would recognize. So you can see we tried to hit a diverse group of folks, from economic development to agriculture to the chamber to our minority communities with the Hispanic building integrated communities folks, environmental, our public safety folks. So again, just trying to, affordable housing. We tried to hit all kinds of education, school system. And what we did is we spent 2 to 3 days with the consultant, and we spent about an hour with key personnel from each one of these agencies, and we had them come in and we interviewed them, talk with them, what were their key issues, what were some of their concerns about as we look at the land use going forward with this, how would we address these issues. As I also mentioned in this kind of first phase, we had 4 public meetings in the fall of 2016. We had those spread out, as you can see, 2 in September and 2 in October. We tried to spread those around the community geographically, 1 in the city, 1 in the county, and then 1 on the north end, 1 in the city, 1 in the town of Broadway, and then 1 on the north end of the county, and then 1 in the south end. They were moderately attended, unfortunately, with a lot of our public projects. Unless you're rezoning something or building a road right through their neighborhood, you're not going to get a lot of public participation. But what we did receive, we were able to incorporate that in early on in the draft. So that kind of was what happened in the first year. Most of the rest of that, after those public input sessions from basically October of 16 until September of 17, our staff and the consultant continue to work and build basically the blueprint or the draft of the plan, the framework. So what you're highlighted in this is kind of the phase 2 of that project, which is kind of kicked off in September of 2017. That's when the first draft was released to our steering committee. And our steering committee for this, has anybody ever heard of the Joint Planning Commission? Have any of you ever heard me talk about them or anything about our community? Let me explain what that is real quick. So when our zoning ordinance was created, the current one we have now, our Unified Development Ordinance back in 2005, we all share the same rules. So if you're in the city, if you're in the county, or if you're in the town of Broadway, from a zoning rules standpoint, development standpoint, you're working under the same set of rules in the same book, which is great. I mean, it makes it easier for everybody. So if you're building a house in Sanford, you're building a house in Broadway or the county, if you're in this zoning district, those standards are the same if you're in the city, county, or whatever, or in Broadway. But what we recognize is we needed a mechanism in place so when our ordinance needed updating, that we allow that information to kind of be shared with all 3 jurisdictions, because if one wants to make a change, it's going to affect the other 2, right? So we had to create a process by which we could kind of vet those changes. So we created what's called the Joint Planning Commission, and that is a committee of 2 elected officials and the planning board chair from Broadway, from Sanford, and from Lee County. So we have, for example, Mayor Mann, the mayor for each one, Mayor Andrews from Broadway, Mayor Mann from the city of Sanford, and Chair Dalrymple from Lee County's on that, and then one other elected officials that those boards appoint, as well as our planning board chairs, who, again, does everybody know what a planning board is? No? Yes? Maybe? So the planning board is a group that is appointed by our elected officials when somebody wants to rezone a property, they want to create a subdivision, if you want to do an ordinance change, the elected boards rely on this citizen-appointed board to kind of let staff and let the applicant go through there, and they make a recommendation back to the elected officials before they take final action on it. So it's a little bit of a process. So the point of that is, though, we felt like that group, between a combination of elected officials plus citizens who kind of delve into work with staff on planning-related issues, was the perfect group to kind of guide this process. So, what came out of this? This is language that kind of came out of those drafts, and there's three key kind of components to this. One is, if you're doing any kind of plan, we had to kind of create a vision. What is it we want our community, this plan to say about our community? And I'm not going to read this exhaustive statement here, but this is kind of the statement that kind of guides our plan and what we think should be happening as we kind of create this land use plan and what it should be supporting. So by having this as our vision statement, then we moved on to what are the objectives, more detailed coming off of that. So one of the things I think is neat about this plan is a lot of simplified graphics. That's one of the things we really wanted to make sure that we could have going forward, is it's something that the public can pick up and kind of easily understand. It's not a lot of plannerese, for lack of a better description. So one of the things we tasked our consultant was to come up with some things that are fairly understandable, and we try to put them in lay terms. And we try to come up with things that when you see that kind of, okay, I know what open space is, I know what farmland preservation means, I know what natural resource protection is. Infill, maybe not as much, but still you kind of get the idea. You're trying to kind of fill in the areas. Compatibility, that's simply land use, making sure that you're not putting an industry right beside a single family neighborhood. Economy, straightforward. Urbanization, that's again goes back to making sure that you have all your services in place. So if you're going to promote higher density product in an area, you're going to have public safety, you're going to have all the resources in place to support that, and so on. So these are the actual objectives. There were, I believe it's 8, I think, total, and we're going to go through each one of these. So if you're coming off that vision statement, so the next step is, okay, so what are we going to accomplish with this land use plan? What are our objectives? What are we trying to do? So you can see here, objective 1 was to direct growth and development activity towards these areas which have existing or planned infrastructure capacity to support the nature and intensity of proposed land uses. And so what the idea was is you see the 4 little icons there below that. So if you kind of go back to what we were looking at before, you'll flip back on. So each objective attempts to try to address one or more of those themes, input themes. So we're making sure if we're going to have an objective, it better be trying to accomplish one of these themes that we felt like were important in our community. So objective 2, promote the full utilization of undeveloped and underdeveloped land resources within urbanized areas that have access to existing infrastructure. Again, you can see there the themes that it's attempting to address. Enhance the aesthetic character of legacy commercial corridors and business district. Legacy commercial corridors, what that means is our existing Corner Boulevard that's kind of heavily developed. That you may have an opportunity there to kind of go back and do some infill and things like that. By promoting reinvestment, redevelopment, and retrofitting that matches the urban form and quality standards promoted by the land use plan for these prominent community assets. Again, those are the themes involved. Objective 4, preserve and protect the character of existing residential neighborhoods, historic districts, and similar community assets from encroachment by incompatible development, while promoting ongoing investment in such areas. So this objective is clearly, most of the ones prior to that have been more business related, commercial related, land use, resource related. This is one where we're trying to say we need to actually kind of look for protecting our residential communities. So number 5, enhance the functionality of the local and regional transportation network, obvious reasons, by aligning land use patterns with existing and planned capacity of the region's streets and highways, promoting connectivity, and developing a manner that encourages alternate modes of transportation. One of the things that the city and county leaders have pressed upon us and have been working well is you've seen our investment in greenways, you've seen our investment in the sidewalks. we're hearing it constantly from developers and from the public is that our community wants to walk more and wants to have accessibility to open spaces and things like that. And DOT is on board with this. So we're getting a lot of success with partnering with DOT and doing, so as we make requests for upgrades on our streets, we're not only looking at how to move cars better, we're also looking at whether we put in bike lanes, whether we put in sidewalks. We make those enhancements and we try to create what they call street diets and things like that. So most of the DOT projects that you're going to see over the next decade, hopefully, will have a component in there will be just more than just thinking streets, that you're going to get part of it's aesthetics, honestly. We want to make our corridors look good. And then part of it is functionality and offering different ways to get around our community. Objective 6, promote the long-term sustainability of Lee County's rich and rural and agricultural heritage by directing growth away from the productive farming areas and concentrating development in the urbanized portions. Self-explanatory, but it's a very important component of this. A lot of our economy is driven by agriculture in Lee County, and that's an asset that we need to protect and preserve and recognize. So, as you'll see more as we dive into this, as part of that is understanding that developers shouldn't be able to just come in here and put infrastructure wherever they want to. We should be the ones kind of directing where we want them to grow. And that doesn't mean there can't be some compromise there and there can't be some adjustment based on the market and things like that. But that doesn't mean too. I mean, the point of that though is we just don't let it kind of go out and have unplanned, uncontrolled growth. So objective 7, protect and preserve the environmental quality of the county for reasonable environmental regulations and context-sensitive development standards to prevent negative effects of development on floodplains, surface water, groundwater, air quality, forest, wetland, and wildlife habitat. This has been a very sensitive issue to my folks in the county and my county leaders. As you know, with the situation with the coal ash, with the situation we've had with the fracking potential here, this is a huge discussion topic for mostly my unincorporated, but the county folks, because that's where a lot of that activity, quite honestly, is.
Quarry must be in that too.
Quarry's a part of that too. So the point of this one is that balancing act again, recognizing that there is value. We have resources here, whether it's granite quarry, whether it might be, used to be sand when they were clay and that kind of thing when the brick industry was stronger, but we have natural resources that can be mined and they're our source of economic potential. But at the same time, how do you balance that out and making sure that you're not kind of degrading your community or somehow negatively impacting the folks around you? Some of that, quite honestly, is out of our control because the state's taking a lot of that authority away from us on some of those issues I just talked about. But what we can control, we're trying to do that balance through zoning. And as you know, just as a follow-up, many of you are aware, of course, the county has a moratorium in place right now for mining and for fracking. So I am working closely with the county attorney and some consultants trying to come up with new rules that we feel like would meet the standards, the legal standards, but at the same time address these very issues.
Are you saying that applies to the quarry as well?
The quarry down off of 87, that specific one, that was actually in a court case, as you probably well aware of.
Yeah.
And no, these rules wouldn't retroactively apply to that because that's already kind of taken. Objective 8, ensure that intensive extractive industries are sited, developed, and operated in a manner that does not negatively impact adjacent or nearby areas containing low intensity. Again, this kind of ties in one right above that. This actually is just more specific to that land use exactly. And 9 and 10, preserve and protect lands designed or designated for economic development and employment generating activities such as industrial parks from encroachment by incompatible land uses. That's just a recognition that job creation and tax base is what drives your community in a lot of ways. But if you can protect those areas and make sure that where you have, and they don't usually take up a lot of your land in your community, but they're such important areas that you have available and that you protect them so that if you can attract those large employers or small, whatever it might be a combination of, the bigger, the Caterpillars, the Pfizers and things like that, or it could be more of an entrepreneurial, smaller collection of folks who have an opportunity to do those kind of things. Objective 10, adopt and implement land use regulations that support development patterns that are consistent with the overall strategic objectives of the plan and conform to the land use vision promoted by the plan. So we debated honestly about objective 10. I mean, it's kind of, some of these are a little bit more obvious than others. This one is just really a statement to ensure that there's not a disconnect, or there's not supposed to be a disconnect between this policy that we create and this vision, and that we actually adopt rules that don't relate to those, and that we're kind of disconnected there. And you'll see there's a strategy at the end of this that we talk about that more in depth. So, we created the vision statement, we created those objectives, then we set about, okay, how do we actually create this blueprint? If you remember, early on in phase 1, we had all that data from GIS, and then we had all that information from the stakeholders. So what we did is we started taking those and building those layers and just trying to put that information on top of each other with the help of our GIS folks. And you got, this is an example: natural resources, transportation, infrastructure, land use development. So again, when you think about all that being transposed on top of each other, and then you take on existing land use, parks, agricultural lands, parcel density, current zoning. All that helps you build kind of a picture of where we are in our community in 2018. So, with that, we're on to our final phase here, which is the final draft was sent out to our Joint Planning Commission and was released to the public in May. In July, the Joint Planning Commission, that group I told you that's been kind of guiding that, approved our final draft and is now being forwarded on to, will be forwarded on to our governing board. But here, I'm going to go to the next slide. This is the plan. This is the draft land use plan. I realize it's hard for you to read it, at that level. So one of the interesting ways that we attack this, and I think it's really neat, and we like it a lot, and I think our Joint Planning Commission folks like it too. So what you have on the left there are what we call place types. And before, in previous land use plans that have been here, we always use kind of our default zoning type categories: industrial, commercial, residential. What we attempted to do with this, again, trying to make it more reader-friendly and understandable, is we try to create themes or place types, if you will, that give a little more description of what we mean. What is actually occurring on that land, so that when you see that, you get a better understanding of what we mean there. Now, some of those are a little harder to understand than others, but more to it. Go ahead, John. So again, what is a place type? It's supposed to describe the development character of a place. It's not just about the type of land use, but it also is meaning to talk about the density, the intensity, the utilities, the transportation, the availability of services. So you're not just saying we want single-family homes at 1 unit per acre on this. We're saying you want single-family homes or single-family homes at 1 unit per acre. You could allow these here, but you need all these things to be in place. This is what should be happening in this land use area. It's about creating a long-term cohesive vision for unique areas within the planning area, maintaining the character of an area, or, as it might be, establishing the future character of an area. Again, think infill versus raw land. So these are really, really neat, and I think this is probably the best selling point I've gotten on this. So each one of those place types, and there were 14, I think, that you saw the little medallions. We've actually created a page, and I put 2 of them here just as an example. I've actually got another set too. That's right. So the one on the left here is what we call countryside. That is the most rural type that we have. And you can see the image. So what the intent here is, and I wish I had a pointer, but starting from the top down, it gives a brief description at the top of what countryside is. You see a visual image. It kind of gives you a snapshot of what you might think of what countryside is. The next thing down, that color bar that goes across there, that's the anticipated land uses. So you'll see the blue is kind of civic. The yellow is residential. You can see they're allowed, but they're not heavy on those. And the green is open space, right. And the green is more open space, whether that's passive open space or agricultural. So clearly you can see what the focus of that district is. Okay, it's not intended to be heavy residential, it's not heavy commercial or anything like that. Next down, step below that is what type of transportation should be happening or what type of facility should be available there. Again, icons. We try to use something simple you can read, you can see, again, somewhat intuitive. You're going to have farmers out there on the roads. These are mostly secondary roads, that kind of thing. There should be off-street trails, so you don't necessarily need sidewalks. This is not an urban area. And then below that, you have context, and what context means, that gives a more accurate description. For example, I think that says, what does it say, John? Maximum dwelling unit of 1 unit per 2 acres. I think it is right here.
It is.
Yeah. Yep. Let's see, deep building setbacks and 35-foot height limit. So again, think county, think out in the rural parts of the area. You don't have a lot of high density product. You don't have water, you don't have sewer, which is the next thing. Your utility indicators. Normally you're going to have well, you may have public water, but you're not likely going to have sewer in these areas. They're most likely going to be on septic systems. And then preferred character. Again, this just talks about, I think it says 2-lane highways. Again, what I'm saying, smaller roads. And let's see, the first, I can't even read that myself, I'm sorry. Agricultural fields and forests. So again, it just repeats those same things and gives you more context. And then the last part at the bottom, it talks about the actual zoning districts. So if you're a developer and you want to have a product, and you want to, so maybe a better example, let me talk about the next one, and then we'll talk about that last category of zones. No, just leave it right there, I'm sorry, John, the one right beside it. So suburban neighborhoods, so comparison. Visually, what's the first thing you see in that picture, right? You know right away there's a huge difference between those two, because you can see suburban neighborhood, a lot more housing, a lot more closer together, right? The same kind of thing, as you go down, notice on the bar itself, what is flipped on that? You went from, you got open space, you got civic, but you got a lot more residential, right? It's kind of telling you this is a heavy residential area. Look at the transportation facilities. Now we're talking about, it's encouraged to have public transportation. Granted, we don't have a lot of money for public transportation here, but it's envisioned at some point as we continue to grow, there should be thought about these areas as having access to public transportation. Bike lanes, walkable neighborhoods, things like that, in combination with vehicles. I'm not going to read everything again, but the density on that one, for example, is 4 to 7 units per acre versus 1 unit for every 2 acres. Huge difference in terms of density. And the last thing, the zoning was, that's where it gets into talking about, so if you're a developer and you want to have a product that's 4 to 7 units per acre, it's going to give you a recommended what type of rezoning districts should be allowed in. So when you come to staff and you want to go to the elected official and say, I want this property to be rezoned, it's going to be supported by the plan. This is just similar examples. You've got a mixed use on this side and then industrial here. Again, I don't want to spend too much time on this. They're pretty self-evident. The mixed use is kind of a newer one, but the idea is exactly that. You can see it's got a rainbow of colors. You've got civic, you've got employment, you've got residential, and you've got commercial. So think like you might have multifamily with shops on the ground floor. You might have offices in the same area. You might have like along the road, kind of like that shows you probably got office parks along the front. You might have some retail that support that, and then at the back you probably have multifamily, something along those lines. So it's kind of a mixed use kind of thing. You see those. What we're saying there is at the intersection. The example I think is given, John, is US 1 and Spring Lane. Will be an area that might be something like that. Where you don't necessarily want that to be single family. It's probably not exactly ideal for industrial per se, but you can have a little bit of all of it. And then lastly is the pure industrial center. This goes back to one of those objectives. I mean, this is the Lee County Industrial Park, the Central Carolina Enterprise Park, and the property up near the airport. This is your true employment centers. It's all dedicated more or less. You see there's no residential, there's no yellow on that. This is encouraged simply to be for jobs. And then anything, but what it does have is open space again. Even though we're industrial, we don't want everything to be completely built out. We want that walkability even in industrial spaces. And we also do want some commercial maybe there because folks have to eat lunch. They need some convenience goods. They may have hotels up there that support people traveling in that need to go to those industrial centers. And again, you can see the transportation thing on that. So again, that just gives you an update. As I said, there's 14 of those, and each one of those has a page like that we think is really good to help everybody understand what that means.
We've kind of run out of time, which we knew we were going to because this is a lot of information. But I'm interrupting you, Marshall, but this is set to be adopted in September.
Just go to the last slide.
So it's actually...
Yeah, it's not much more. Yeah, there we go.
Yep.
So as he said, we are in the last throes of getting this finally adopted after 2 years. The planning boards, which I was telling you about, and the governing boards are going to hear this in public hearings in September, most likely. So our plan is to go in the 3rd week of September to the county and the city, 4th week of September to Broadway. We'll have a public hearing. Anybody from the public is welcome to come speak about the plan. And then normally what happens after that, the planning board makes a recommendation that night, and then we bring it back to the governing boards at their next meeting, which is usually the 1st week in October for a final adoption.
Yep.
And I did put a link there at the bottom. You're more than welcome. If you want to take a look at the plan, the full draft of the plan is on that website. You're more than welcome to dive into it. You can call me, give me a call. I should have put my contact information.
In a short 25 to 30 minutes, Marshall did a very nice job of condensing, because there's a lot of information. I've seen this many a time. This is a very user-friendly website. What is it, 60 to 80 pages long? I don't know how long it is. It's a big, beefy document. But yes, you can just get on Google and just do Plan, Say, and Lean. You can see the whole document.
Yes. And
it will actually break down, in this condensed version, it will break down each individual category and what we're planning on doing.
And the other thing, probably just as neat, if not even better, there's actually also an interactive map. So you can click on any piece of property. There is. Maybe your property or property, neighbor's property or whatever. You can see what the recommendation is, and it has all kinds of information about that.
Yep.
Thank you all very much. Let's give Marshall a can sure tell he knows his product here and mastery of it, and thank you for sharing that with us. It's such an important part of our community. Thank you again, and thank you, John, for introducing me. And John, I do understand Vanna is retiring.
Yeah. You think there's something for me?
It's worth a shot. Van, would you get someone to draw for us?
Yeah, today
please?
we raised $66 for Polio Plus to eradicate polio. We got $33 for the winner and $33 to Polio Plus. Jennifer, could you please pick a ticket for me? And the last four are
7863.
7863, I repeat.
You're gonna hate this.
Did you, Jennifer?
It's me.
Go ahead.
Oh, congratulations.
And you know what that means.
I get $33. Thank you, man.
But you're going to lead us in the four-way test.
Thank
And
you.
everything comes with a price.
I thought you were going to say drinks on Jennifer.
The four-way test of the things that we think, say, or do. First,
Is it true? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? Will it be beneficial to all concerned? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.